This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. If you love brewing as much as we do and are inspired by the work of leading commercial brewers like Mitch Steele of New Realm, Tommy Arthur of Lost Abbey, Matt Brindleson of Firestone Walker, Jeff Stuffings and Avery Swanson of Jester King, Jason Perkins of Allagash, and more, then put one of our 2018 Brewers Retreat events on your calendar. These luxury brewing events at gorgeous resort locations around the country pair great brewers, great food, and intimate camaraderie for a truly unique and unforgettable experience. Learn more at brewersretreat.com. And if you're interested in reaching the thousands of listeners who tune into every episode of the Craft Beer and Brewing podcast, we'd love to welcome you as a sponsor. For more information, drop an email to info@beerandbrewing.com, and our media sales team will craft a plan that works for you.
Hi everybody, it's John Holl, the senior editor of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, and I am here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the Bonn Place Brewery, or Bonn Place Brewing Company, I guess is probably the right way to say it. Right?
Either way.
All right, fine. And that is Sam Masotto. He is the owner, he is the brewer. He was recently featured in the pages of our magazine, and I encourage you to check that out. He has been a home brewer for a long time. He's been on the other side of the bar, working the stick in the past, and now he's got his own brewery. And not only that, but some hardware from the Great American Beer Festival earlier this year for styles that don't get a lot of attention in sort of, I guess, the beer geek community, as it were, but ones that you're fairly passionate about, and that's mild.
Sure, yeah.
Sam, welcome to the broadcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on the broadcast. It's pretty rad to be here.
Well, we're at your place. So
right. Well, yeah, that was easy.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking it easy on me. I don't know that 8 years ago, serving you beer at the Pony Bar, I would know that I'd be on this side talking to you one day about this. But
I don't know 8 years ago sitting at the Pony Bar that I thought I'd be alive today. So it's
well, that makes two of us, I guess.
It's been some hard living since then.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of your journey as to
Sure.
what brought you here.
Sure.
What am I drinking?
You are drinking Mooey. We call it Mooey Ordinary Bitter. That beer has had a little bit of a conflict with style since the inception, and mostly due to we'll call it an identity crisis with that beer. When we were presented with the it's not necessarily a challenge, but what do we make as our light offering? Working, and again, I know we'll get to this later, but working in places like the Pony Bar or at Newburgh Brewing Company and these other wonderful places I've been at over the years. There's certainly, we'll say, stylistic trends, but there's one consistent. People come in and right away, if they're intimidated by a menu or are not familiar with a menu or just creatures of habit, and this is their thing, they will specifically ask for, I like this. I like hoppy. That's a very popular one, of course. I like something that tastes like a Blue Moon. I want something light. So when we said, what's going to be our something light, working at Newburgh so closely with Christopher, Chris Basso, and then he was under Garrett Oliver for years.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from that, I was already in love with English styles, and I think that's sort of one of the main threads that we had, that why we worked so well together, Chris and I. I said, well, hey, why not we made a great bitter there. Chris makes a great bitter called Bitter English. Mm-hmm. It's a bitter. That I would even argue is maybe more of an ordinary bitter. But I love Boddington's, and I said, well, shoot, we should have a pub ale. Years ago, this is really the trick. I used to hang out at this bar in Montreal. I'd go to Montreal twice a year, and I'd hang out at this bar called, I don't know if it was called NYK's or Nick's or Neeks or, it was NYK''S. Okay. And they always had a pub ale on. It was essentially a cream ale, but it was way more of a bitter. They called it McCausland's Cream Ale. Of course, Saint-Ambré, I forget the name of the brewery up there in Montreal, McCausland.
Okay.
And they'd made this amazing pub ale, and we had a nitro line, and I said, I want to see that beer on nitro all the time. Now we haven't done that. We've learned that our customers don't necessarily want that beer on nitro all the time.
Really?
I also like the fact that they don't want it on nitro all the time. I like that they want something else because that gives me the opportunity. We've had everything from sour ale to lager on nitro, which is really rad because a doppelbock on nitro is pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm of the firm belief, and I know people will disagree with me, as long as it's not an overly hoppy style, and I think if it's a more malt-forward style, it can really benefit from nitrogenation. It can benefit from having a nitro tap. And so you have a dedicated nitro tap here in your tasting room.
Correct.
I'm looking at it right now. But it's not as popular as you would think?
No, I think it's very popular. We're an anomaly in this area. We have a different cask every week, and we always have a nitro beer on.
Okay.
And they sell very well. Maybe it's because we've designed it so that we'll have 9 beers available. Sometimes, I think once in our history have we had nitro draft cask be an English amber ale, Opus. We don't have it on right now, but that was really awesome because what that gave us the opportunity to do, gave me the opportunity to enjoy the beer we brew here 3 different ways, but also, hey, this is the same beer, came out of the same tank, same process. Check it out these 3 ways: conditioned in a cask, served on nitro, served on draft, and with more carbonation and things. So it's not that Mooey was ever intended to totally be a pub ale only. We always wanted to have it on draft, make sure we had it on hand pull as well, or gravity pull even. But bar top, pin, cask, firkin. The Mooey was modeled after that McCausland cream ale. Okay. So when we put it out, I think we put it out as a bitter. And this is to answer your original question. We put it out as a bitter.
I was going to put you back on the track,
yeah, thank you. Everybody said, or people would say, oh, I don't like something bitter, or I want something hoppy, and they would taste it like, this isn't hoppy enough, this isn't bitter. Right. It's like, well, this is a style, So we changed it to English cream ale.
Okay.
Sold very well, and I said, look, let's call it what it is here. It really is probably more of a special or best bitter because of its alcohol content. It's always clocked in at about 4.7 to 5, so 4.8. But for all intents and purposes, it is an English style bitter. But the interesting thing about it, until recently, it was all Belgian malt and all American hops.
Nothing English about it. Yeah.
Right. Well, our yeast strain really is what, and our water profile was what we tried to commit to with that. But we have changed it. Now it is a pale malt, Maris Otter, malt, and I think actually that beer is still American hops, but just it's so low hopped and the way we're using them, I don't know that. I'm sure a trained palate could detect it, and I've never had anybody call us out on it, but I wouldn't be upset to admit it. Again, it won silver at GABF, so it must be doing something right.
In the mild category.
In the bitter category.
In the bitter category.
Ordinary standard bitter category.
Okay.
That's what we entered it under, because I think that's what it fulfills the best.
Okay. Was there feedback from the judges that you've seen yet?
Yeah, we got all 4 scorecards back. 2, Nemo and Mooey were medal winners, and their scorecards were, of course, we'll say near flawless. They were beautiful. A third actually advanced to the next round. That's a beer called Merci that we do. It's an Imperial Black Saison. Not that that's a style, but
awesome. I've said styles exist, but they've become meaningless in beer these days.
Right. Well, and that's the blurred line that we try to explore here.
Sure.
Part of the reason we're so dedicated to this, we haven't made an IPA yet. I'm not anti-IPA. We just haven't made an English IPA, so I refuse to call it that.
But you get accused of being anti-IPA.
Oh, big time.
Okay.
And the people who do that, the accusations, probably have never stepped foot in here, because if they would know that, or maybe they haven't, just left, because it never says IPA on the board. But there are very hoppy offerings that they'd be like, oh, this is precisely what I'm looking for.
All right. Well, let me back up, just because I'm really curious about this, because you have, if this is your pub ale, if Mooey's your pub ale, your house beer, you've obviously put some thought into what you want to serve people, and we're here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's an old steel town. It's trying to reinvent itself, and has been for the last couple of decades, and is modestly successful as being an artistic community. But it's still an old steel workers town, and we are firmly in Yingling country, where an amber-ish lager reigns supreme. I mean, you have no shot in hell of getting one of those taps at any bar in this area, because that's going to keep places in the works. So putting the thought into having a house beer that isn't, let's say, abrasive to folks who have not fully grabbed onto the craft beer culture, as it were. I think if you were in New York City, it might be a little bit different. If you were in Boston or Philly or one of those, but here this is sort of an island, so it was very deliberate for you, to do that. To the point that you were making before on having it 3 different ways of cast draft and nitro, is that sustainable in the long run? Is that something that because you have people coming through all the time who, for the first time?
Right. And so that's where Opus Amber comes in. When I was homebrewing, I had the same, we'll say, obsession and preferences that I do now. I think I made 1 IPA as a homebrewer. Or, 1 IPA, 1 Belgian Pale Ale.
Yeah.
I like hoppy beer. I just don't prefer to make it, and there's a lot available. I don't know what it is exactly. I couldn't tell you that. I was more into the esoteric or what was unavailable to me. And like we've spoken about before, and maybe people who are meeting me for the first time, orally, visually, whatever, the idea behind Opus was I was doing so much traveling and I fell in love with American amber ales. I was like, whoa, this is a perfect beer for me. It's actually English, more so. We'll say, maybe a little bit more hopped, but with American hops. But where is this? Why is nobody really making this in the Northeast? And there were a few available, hopback amber, things like this, but they were more hoppy. They weren't as malt forward, and they were a little too strong. I wanted that Alaskan amber. I wanted that fat tire, time especially. So I started making those as a home brewer, and we actually named that beer after a dog that lived on our street named Opus, who was a French bulldog. The beer became the Cat Dog Amber Ale because he was a little son of a bitch, and he looked like a cat, and he had the attitude of a cat, and he had the butthole of a cat. He looked like a cat, but he was a dog. So with respect to his canine personality and his feline physicality, we called it the Cat Dog Amber Ale. What I quickly realized when I went professional, we redrew our logo, and the Opus that you see now all over the tap room and everywhere, that Opus is actually modeled after a dog that I grew up with named Lola, who was a French bull. Who was a pit bull.
Okay.
So we kept the name Opus because I realized that perfecting this amber ale was my work. This was my Opus. This was where I was going after. So Opus Amber Ale, actually, this is the first time in a long time. We've only had 2 spells where we didn't have Opus on. We have Opus in the tank right now, but that's my answer to the Yingling drinker. That's Opus and Mooey. We've brewed in perpetuity since we've opened. We'll say we've never ran out of Mooey. We'll hopefully
knocking on the wood
not
table,
run out of Opus again. And if we do, I'm a little bit more okay with that. I'd really prefer to see Mooey on all the time. If we had flagships, we would call these our flagships. Opus and Mooey were the answers to the local drinkers. If you look at the Untapped reviews, they were really low until...
Do you look at the Untapped reviews?
No, not anymore. I actually had an incident, we'll say, over the summer. Somebody called
Did you
Scottish...
get in the sandbox?
Yeah, big time. Oh, big time. I threw sand in somebody's eye, and then I realized that I was the one crying. So I used to go on, and I would simply toast everybody every night. I thought that if you give me attention, if you give Bonn Place Brewing Company attention, directly giving me attention, I should at least return that favor.
Sure.
And at least acknowledge that I saw it. Thank you for your feedback. And one time this person wrote on their Scottish breakfast, I don't know, 1 star, 1 bottle cap, 2 bottle caps, whatever. And by the way, Greg Avola, great guy, nothing against Untapped. Let's just say that right away.
He's not reviewing all of the beers.
Right. And I think he provided a great service, but just to sort of show you how little it matters. So I'm reading the Untapped review. I was in the brew house. It was a Sunday, and I see Scottish breakfast, 1 bottle cap, beers, butyric. And they spelled butyric, not butyric. So I wrote back this diatribe. I was like, I think what you mean is butyric, and I'll have you know we have a beer right now that is butyric. It's sitting in the basement, not to be served unless it cleans up. And what you mean is phenolic, which is appropriate to style for a Scotch ale, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, what? You don't even have 5 minutes to hang out with your wife and child. And you have 5 minutes to go on this
to yell
ridiculous
at some anonymous
thing?
guy on Untapped,
Yeah, so I made a commitment that day to never go on again. But people insist on telling me how beers are performing. And we have seen a boost in Mooey since since it got that award. Same recipe, same beer,
Right.
but since it got the award,
Well, when you say award-winning, I mean Miller Lite uses that in its
Sure.
in its
Pabst Blue
advertising.
Ribbon, yeah.
PBR uses that as well. Yeah, no, of course. I mean, and having been a GABF judge for the last couple of years, I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and there's a lot of shitty beer that we taste, especially in that first round. And you hope that what you kick forward will continue to perform well and continue to rise to the top. And I've never been surprised by gold medal winners, silver medal, bronze medal winners at GABF. Like when you taste something, it's like, okay, out of everything that's entered, I can see this making sense. Right. And so, but are you finding now, because again, you're not in one of these areas where, I don't want to say people aren't savvy, because of course they are, but they're used to something different. And you're just off the main drag here, pretty close to downtown. You have this small little space that is, it's very homey, it's very funky. Are you getting people who are clearly venturing out of their comfort zone? And did you anticipate that, or when you opened up, did you think like, oh, I'm just going to get the beer geeks in the greater Bethlehem area?
I never anticipated getting as many beer geeks as we do, and we don't really get them. They don't tend to like me, what I do. I could say something stupid, and they're already pissed at me. I find that beer enthusiasts and beer snobs really like this place. Okay. With more respect to style. The beer geek who's just looking to collect some cans and drink the next hoppy thing or the next sour thing, they might like some of our beers, and I love when they do. That's really nice, but... So to bring it all together and wrap that all into a nice package, we sent 4 beers to GABF. I made a game day audible decision to send a fresher batch of one of those beers in. It was a pale ale, very hoppy. The beer was judged, and 3 scorecards came back great, 2 flawless, 1 advanced to the next round. Better examples on the table, but great beer. Okay, cool. The 1 came back, just what happened, diacetyl detected, slick, da-da-da-da-da. Wow. That beer is one of our highest rated beers on Untapped in our tap room.
Interesting.
It's a beer called Scooch. I think that it was just never got to reabsorb. I don't know that it had diacetyl when we served it in the tap room. I'm pretty sensitive to it. Yeah. Case in point. We could put something hoppy. We got a beer coming out called Skippy the Bush Kangarooga. It's all Galaxy and Wakatu and Pacific Gem. It'll do pretty well. Whenever we put Bunny Farm out, it does pretty well. These are 2-3 week beers, on draft. Gone. Yeah. Mooey will sit around for 4 or 5 weeks, and we've seen an increase in sales, of course, now that people are more aware of it. We've gotten some really great press about it, especially within the industry. A lot of brewers and people like this, and the famous line is, look to the brewers to see what the next trend is. Yeah. They tend to like those beers, and I think there's an encouragement. Our guests here, the people who come in here, yes, I am surprised by... I'm just surprised by how many people come through the doors. My wife and I thought we were going to run this place forever. Yeah. The 2 of us. We're like, oh, we got this. Like, no. I mean, you have 2 guys making beer right now, and I'm sitting here talking to you, and normally I'd be doing something else around the tap room, but I may be in there with them as well. We're just trying to keep up, which is a really wonderful thing. Some might say a nice problem to have, but it's not a problem. No. It's as long as we don't run out of beer. That, to me, that is a problem. That's a little unprofessional, but I feel like being in the industry for so long and being able to temper that is a nice thing. But we could run out of beer too. As unprofessional as I might say that may be, I still maintain that. So I'm not shocked by the types of people who come in here. I'm shocked by how much they appreciate the beers that we want to make. So, for instance, we'll put a very hoppy beer in a cask with lactose and fruit, and we'll call that our Sprinkles series. The first one was Titty Sprinkles. Right. And that was gone in 5-6 hours, of course. 11 gallons, see you later. But we also put our Dark Mild in a cask. I publicly announced it was probably the best beer we ever made, and I wasn't lying. Actually, we did it again 2 weeks ago, and it had sulfur in it, so I had to dump most of it, unfortunately. Wow. But that first go of it, holy smokes. I mean, it sold in 6 hours as well, and now you're talking about a $4 pint. Again, with your the comment about the Yuengling drinker, the local drinker, we try to keep our prices reflect that as well. Okay. A Dark Mild, if you're in the UK, a Dark Mild is it's an inexpensive beer. A bitter is an inexpensive beer. So our pints are, at this point, $4 to $6, $4 to $7, usually $4 to $6. Happy hour, you're doing it for $3 to $5.
Which I just want to clarify for our Midwestern listeners that for this general area of the country is a reasonable deal.
Right. Yeah.
'Cause
Sorry.
There's going to be people who are listening who are going, "Good Lord! Like what? It's
$3 for a pint."
I know. Yeah. It's what happened to 50
I can get a Hams for 50 cents. I love Milwaukee, by the way. If there's anybody listening in Milwaukee, please visit.
I hope there's somebody listening from Milwaukee.
Oh,
it's a
God.
great city.
What a great city.
It is such a great city.
It's a perfect city.
It has my favorite brewery tour, which is Lakefront.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
of
Lakefront
course.
has the best brewery tour in the business, hands down.
When was the last time you were there and took the tour?
About a year ago.
Did you get a tour? Would you remember Evan, big beard?
Oh, yeah.
Tall? Okay.
Yeah,
Evan,
what a great guy.
Evan now brews at Circa.
Somebody told me that he
Circo,
left to go
Churco?
brew. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know where.
He's in Brooklyn now.
Okay.
He's by you.
I have to go over and say hi.
For sure. And actually, formerly of Six Point, Danny is the head brewer there. So they got a really cool crew over there.
So before we just start talking about who we know and
right.
training ourselves, dropping names over here. Thanks,
Sniffing that
Evan.
butthole.
So you worked at the Pony Bar in New York, which
Correct.
for folks who don't know is one of the city's great beer bars. You can read all about Manhattan in an upcoming issue of Craft Beer and Brewing magazine and places to visit and cool things to do. And I want to it's one of those beer bars where they're so dedicated to what they're serving. There's nothing that goes on tap without thought. And what I've always been struck with is that the people who go in there are very deliberate about being open-minded. I never really thought that I would go in there with, I really want to drink X today. I hope they have it. It was going to be, I'm going to drink whatever moves my fancy. And so as somebody who works stick there and who now works with the public in a different way, how do you find the consumers who come to a brewery versus those who go to a beer bar?
Well, so
are they
we're talking,
harder on you because you made the beer? Like I don't
I've
imagine
never
that
experienced that.
Okay.
Personally. So we're talking New York City, 2009 to 2012.
And you just poured another beer, by the way. This is like a pork smoked something or other?
Yeah, basically.
Man,
Yeah,
I'm getting bacon off of this
Crazy. We'll get to that, huh? Yeah. Well, this is actually going to bring our relationship full circle, too,
but yeah,
which is really cool. Cheers. So we're talking New York City, 2009 to 2012, as opposed to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, 2007. What year? 2017.
17.
Yeah, we opened in 2016. So we used to get a lot more. Give me a Bud Light, give me a Miller Light, give me this and that. That was sort of more the approach at Pony for people who didn't know what they were getting into.
Okay.
We seldom have that here. We do have that here. Typically, I find that it's more, and I am behind the bar. I was behind the bar every night, and I'm behind the bar often now. I find it's way more now, what do you have that's close to? Like, they know what they're getting into. And then we do have people who come in and they'll drink a beer and they're like, whoa, this is great. Where's it made? I'm like, but that's not a Hollywood soundstage there. That's a real brewery. That's a real life brewery, and I'm a real life brewer. That's not the Lehigh Valley accent, by the way.
No.
That's my me playing myself. I could do the Pennsylvania Dutch thing for you if you want. So
no, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh boy. I hope somebody in Milwaukee's listening. So I'll be kicked out pretty soon. I find that people are maybe even like a bit more lenient. I don't know that they expect. I don't know what their mindset is coming in here, but we have so many repeat customers and we have such a great community. I can't stress enough how amazing the people who come in here are.
Okay.
Now we do get the once in a while not.
Yes.
And even some of the people who come in here with frequency can be we all get drunk and silly.
Sure.
But they're typically the people who come in here with any regularity are very well behaved, very respectful, and really seem to enjoy anything we do. Of course, there's the miss once in a while. Oh, I don't like black licorice, and you made a licorice double bock. I don't want that.
And don't drink it.
Right, exactly. Well, and they're usually pretty fair about that. When I was looking at Untappd, there was the one bottle cap. I don't like sours and I don't like cask ales. Well, why'd you order a Goza on cask? That was really silly of you, you know. But that wasn't a regular customer. We may have never seen that person again. I feel like people are maybe a bit more forgiving. they feel more involved. I'll give them tastes out of the tank sometimes and say, hey, I got something coming up for you that you're going to love. Whoa, this is exactly my thing, da-da-da-da. And we really know our customers here. I take that Danny Meyer approach.
Which is?
Just the setting the table and trying to give the best service possible. And I don't always do the best at that. Saturday night I told the fella, he said, hey, I've been waiting for 10 minutes. I said, looks like you're going to wait another 10. I immediately regretted the decision, but I think a week of my grandmother's funeral paired with getting busy all at once. One of our bartenders wasn't here this past weekend, so I was bartending and maybe not too happy about that.
Sure.
There was a culmination that just went right on that guy.
I mean, so again, when you were working for somebody else, when you're working at a bar, a pony bar, you're working for tips, you're working for somebody else, you want to be able to continue to be paid, so you will, do your best to come back the next day, to do a good enough job to be asked to come back the next day. Here, it's got to be frustrating because when you're putting your heart and soul into something and you're getting a lot of pushback or a little pushback, or I think it's up for brewers to I think it's natural for brewers, I should say, to take things much more personally because this is personal. And I forget who it was, but there's a brewer who once told me that this profession, being a brewer, is continuously acts in humility because it's about treating the customer right even when you don't want to, especially in a day and age of Untappd and Yelp. But it's also humility because you can do your best, but sometimes the beer isn't going to do what it wants to do. You're at the yeast's mercy. You're at, a storm rolled through and blew something into your tanks. You're at, there's 1,000 different things. So it's acts of humility, and I think that's frustrating for a lot of brewers. And you're nodding in that way.
Look familiar.
for folks who are thinking about getting into this, and I think that there's still so many people who want to open up breweries. What's the thing that you've learned that has surprised you in the last year and a half of being open?
So when I was at Newburgh Brewing Company, I was the assistant brewer there for 2 years, and I was also a bartender there. I was there, sometimes 16 hours. Would start brewing at 6, 7 a.m. and finish bartending at midnight. And I always said, well, shoot, I'm doing this here. I can do this, we'll say, for myself.
Sure.
I can do this. I got this.
Yeah.
There's so much more involved. The two things I set out to do, make beer and serve beer, I'm not really doing those two things.
Okay.
I have to run a business. And, a lot of the things that maybe one would anticipate me saying here, because there are so many variables with beer making as opposed to a lot of other alcohol industries specifically, but from where the grain is grown to what kind of glass that beer is served in.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a beer that's perfection, wins an award at World Beer Cup, goes to a bar that doesn't clean their draft lines, and you have a shit beer. Now
Right.
you're being judged on that.
Or served in a frosty pint or
Right,
a dirty
too cold.
pint. Right.
Absolutely. There are so many variables with beer. I knew that going into this. You good? Okay. I don't think I realized how wait, well, what does hops? Oh.
So the fun thing about recording this podcast is
Yeah,
we're
we're
actually so the brewery is closed right now. We're sitting in the tasting room, and Sam's guys are actually brewing while we're doing a podcast. And now they're saying to Sam, "Go back and do your podcast."
Yeah, go back to your go back to your fame and fortune.
Acts of humility.
Bougie. I'm a little bougie.
I would say we're going to edit that out, but we're absolutely not. No, we're keeping that. This is real life.
This is live. This is real.
Fuck it, we're doing it live.
Yeah. AF, as they say. So I guess the biggest thing I've learned, Saturday night was a wake-up call. I'll tell you the exact situation. This fellow comes in, apparently he's been in here a few times. We were shorthanded, came to the bar. He saw somebody order growlers and get their growlers filled before he was served. In reality, what had happened was they had ordered their growlers before he even got to the bar. I forgot that we don't do growler fills after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays because we're so slammed.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the kegs kicked. I go to change it. It makes a mess, spurts everywhere. So now I'm cleaning up a mess, trying to fill growlers and helping customers. I told the guy I'd be right with him. Somebody walked up behind him that I knew. I said, "Hey, so-and-so." And the fellows, and then so-and-so said, oh, he was here before me. I said, yep, I'm getting to him. I said, what can I get you, sir? And that's when he said, I've been here for 10 minutes. And I said, well, it looks like you're going to be here for another 10. I can't say stuff like that.
No.
And
I mean, you can in your head, and I think
right.
that's a natural thing. But it is such a pins and needles thing. I think for a lot of brewers as well. Of like, you have one moment of frustration, and if you're a guy who is prone to wearing his heart on his sleeve, as I think so many in this industry are.
Oh, it's a passionate.
There's a reason that there's a lot of folks who work front of house and brewers stay back of house.
I think I held my own, certainly at the Pony Bar, representing somebody else's brand.
Yeah.
There were 4 of us. It was Mariana, Susanna, Henry, and myself, and then Paco. Every day. I mean, there was really 5 of us running that, and then of course the guys in the kitchen. I can't take any credit away from them, but as far as front of the house, there were 5 of us. And that was the face of the Pony Bar. Now, Dan McLaughlin and Pat Hughes were by no means the Wizards of Oz or the Willy Wonkas. They were very present, and maybe more than others, or maybe less, but people knew who they were. But we were almost like this first line of defense, right? I have to learn how to become that Willy Wonka here. You know, if you know, we are very active in social media. Maybe some of the listeners know about our Instagram videos. If they don't, they're quirky. They're something.
Yes,
they're
yes,
something
they are.
else.
Again, in the latest issue of Craft Beer and Brewing magazine, we profile Sam and his team and his brewery here, and Jeff Quinn, who's a great photographer, a great friend, came out to shoot, and you recapped what you said to him. I'm going to be pointing at you to.
So Jeff said to me, "Hey, so we were in the back just taking photos." He goes, "Well, what do you want me to capture here?" And I said, "Well, we're kind of quirky, we're kind of weird." And I said the same thing. I don't know if you've seen our Instagram videos, but listen, man, you want me with my shirt off, GABF medals around my neck, shotgunning a beer? I'll do it. And he said, "Great."
And that's in the magazine. Jamie Bogner and I, we saw the proofs come in, and I had to call Jeff, and I was like, "What the hell?" And he was like, "Hey man, it was totally crazy. It was a lot of fun. It was really great, and we loved the shots, and it was something unlike we
Right.
The magazine, as far as I know, has never published anything like that before. So thank you.
No, thank you.
You know, when you're saying though the Willy Wonka thing, what was your expectation of what you would be as a small business owner, as a brewer, versus reality?
I really thought that.
Like, what's the one thing you're missing the most?
I pictured D.H. Lawrence era, post-industrial England, mom and pop, running the shop, serving lard on bread and pints of porter. I really thought this was going to be an English pub, and it is. But we're in a college town. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, you're looking for the television for the football games?
I was looking for the television.
We've done it. We actually had a really neat little private event on a Sunday one time. We put a TV up there.
I was going to say, but it's blocked by a
barn door.
Yeah.
We have a TV up there, and we had 2 hand pulls, or 2 gravity pours. We had Mooey and Nemo with the medals hanging around them as a thank you to all the people who let us make those beers and drink those beers and make those beers what they are.
Right.
Because let's face it, as stubborn as I am and as much as I love making those beers, if they didn't sell, well, I can't sit on beer forever.
Yeah.
We love English styles here. It's
Talk to me about your brew house, actually.
Yeah. It's a 7-barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 7-barrel brew house, wood-clad, modeled after a Peter Austin system.
Which is not something that you see in the U.S. all that much.
No, and we didn't do the whole brick line,
Okay.
But it is when I was ordering equipment, I was actually going to order from England.
Right.
And I found an American company who no longer exists.
Who were they?
Systech.
Okay.
Stainless. There's going to be people who listen to this and stop listening right around now because they're so upset with them. We bought from them at a time where they were making super high quality, and they did a killer job, and they did it exactly to our specifications. I said, I want a wood-clad system, gas-fired this, electric-fired this, to mimic a Peter Austin, or rather what's his name? I'm going to mess up the name, so I'm not even going to say it. But again, we were going to order from the UK, and we ended up finding an American manufacturer that made it for us. We're certainly not an English pub in every way. I like to think that we are appropriate for the area we're in. We're in a steel town. There's a lot of steel. There's a lot of metal. There's a lot of open space, but at the same time, it's
industrial chic.
Industrial, yeah, there you go. Industrial chic. Oh, hey, that's us. That's me. Party in the front, party in the back, party all day. Saying that about the craft beer and brewing thing was cool because, I like to think that we we maintain doing a nice job of being. We're like a Viking village. We like to have fun. But we also feel like what we put out, the product we put out, is of quality.
Yeah.
That's not usually what you see, and a lot of people take themselves very seriously, and I understand that, and a lot of people get treated that way. I'm a goofball. It's reflected in our beers. It's reflected in our beer names. It's reflected in our tap room. So we had to make it, and if I'm going to spend 16 hours a day someplace, working over 100 hours, again, being a business owner, and that sort of answers that question too.
Yeah.
I had to make it a space I'm comfortable in. And of course, you can't do that you can't design a space without putting you into it.
But see, yes, and I think that that's a very smart way of thinking about it. But there are so many breweries, especially back in the older days, but even still that I walk into these days, where they're so focused on the beer that the tasting room or the surrounding area of the brewery has gotten almost no attention, and it feels like it's a frat house afterthought with a couple of beat up couches, right. And TVs with wires exposed and just sort of hanging on the wall, having the Food Network on in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, in non-college football season, which just sort of strikes me that there's not a lot of thought that goes into it. So you guys obviously put a lot of thought into the materials, to where you are, to what you want it to be, even though Bethlehem was never in your original plan.
It was actually. That's the funny thing. It was, and then it wasn't because. And
I thought South Jersey was in your.
It was. That wasn't the original plan.
Okay.
We got sidetracked because Gina's grandmother passed away. My wife's grandmother passed away and left behind a farm, and we were like, New Jersey's first farmhouse brewery.
Sure.
Wonderful. Well, then we found out why New Jersey had no farmhouse breweries, especially South Jersey.
Okay.
Which is where a majority of the farms are.
But originally, you wanted to be here.
Originally, yeah. Well, so I was working at Newburgh. So okay, I'll get into the taproom thing. It was very deliberate. When we designed it, we worked with an architect locally to make sure it was compliant with everything, and he came up with some really great ideas that we went with. He actually came up with the stable idea. I don't know that I saw that originally. It was supposed to be, we'll say, like knee-high walls and a barn
I get it
look.
now. Yeah.
And he was like, well, how about if you're talking barn? We always wanted to be in a church or a barn.
Okay.
So he said, you're talking barn, how about a stable? So that was really rad. We worked with an amazing contractor, Eastmuir Construction, custom builders out of Collegeville. And it was Simon Eastmuir, the guy who runs the company. He's from Australia. His 7 guys and myself just went to it. I demoed everything with a couple friends, and then the 8 of us just went to it. And I mean, when I say us, I mean the 8 of them. Let's face it. I mean, I just did finishing touches and maybe helped out here and there, but they really just did such an awesome job of maintaining what I wanted to see. Furniture was all us, aside from like maybe this table or the bar tops, that was them. But it was very deliberate, and I feel like the trends. A couple weeks ago, we had a very large brewery approach us to talk to us about what we do here. This very large brewery, although not a macro, this large brewery has been extremely influential in the craft beer scene, and they want to know what we're doing. What are we? Pardon me, 1 second. Pardon me. Keep talking, John. Go,
wow.
Go!
Sam actually just jumped up from the table. He ran towards the door, and now he's back.
That's Bruce is a professor, or no, I'm sorry, he's an administrator at Lehigh, and he runs every day, and I always like to encourage him.
Okay.
To go, Bruce, go. I can't miss it. So we have quite a community here. It's amazing.
So for those of you who listen to this podcast regularly, Jamie is the guy who edits these and puts these together, and it's at this point of him sitting in the office in Fort Collins, Colorado, putting his hands on his temples and just going,
wondering,
what the hell
who are
is
you
Holl doing?
Go, Bruce, go!
Go, Bruce, go! I'm going to work that into the...
if it can get in there somewhere, I'll let them know that it's in there.
To the description of this episode. All right, so large... craft brewer.
Yep. So they want to know what we're doing, and the reason they want to know what we're doing is because they're expanding opportunity, and I like to say that we're not expanding here, we're not exploding, we're imploding.
Okay.
And that can be scary because it's an old building. Again, here's that knocking. I'd like to see. I'm exploring revenue opportunities from within because we sell every drop on premise. We don't distribute at all.
Right.
So we can
and
keep
you don't
our
package.
price.
You don't
No, not-
aside from growlers.
No, not yet. We just ended up in cans with our name on a label because Soul Artisan and Bonn Place brewed a beer together down at Free Will.
Oh, nice.
And it was canned.
Soul's out in Easton.
Easton,
so,
correct. Yeah, they're
just,
based.
a
Their
little bit
headquarters
east
are in
from here.
Easton.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we have a really nice relationship. We have a great community in every way.
Sure.
Whether it's beer, well, it's all beer related, but whether it's government or beer, it's a wonderful community. So, I feel like there's a trend going that way. Now, I'm not saying that you can't sustain a production brewery these days. That is not by any means what I'm saying. I don't know that I want to get into that. If the opportunity were to arise, which we do have an opportunity coming up to maybe package some beer and see some light distribution, I may go for it. We may go for it and see what opportunities exist within that. But really, the idea behind Bonn Place was, and it's in our business plan, which is on the wall over there, the drawing over there. The beer was never supposed to be ancillary, secondary, an afterthought. The tap room was always the focus. What I like to say is, if the beers are the trophies, you need a nice showcase to put those trophies into.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Now, if I don't have that showcase, if we don't have that showcase, if Bonn Place doesn't have that showcase, the trophies, you could drink this beer in a drab concrete setting. Maybe that's the reflection of it. Maybe that's what you want,
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that warehouse approach. I think that's a really cool thing too. In fact, I like a lot of breweries. I love a lot of breweries like that. But for Gina and I, when we were designing this, it was really about how could we reflect our personality, our beer preferences, our beer styles, and you want to smell the beer being brewed. You want to smell fermentation. So you have to engage all five senses here. This
Yeah.
is very visceral. You can't hear beer. You
Right.
can hear carbonation, you can hear fizz, you can hear the act of beer being poured. But what you can hear is chatter. You can hear conversation. You can hear music. You can feel vibes. Let's go sixth sense here and feel.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Sure. No,
And-
there's certain times when you walk into a brewery and it feels like it's a place that there's just a good energy in the
Absolutely.
room. Or you make it yourself. I remember, going into bars back in the day with a bunch of friends and there's a jukebox that you could control and you put on your own music and everybody just starts having a
Remember
good time. Yeah, those were the good old days. And now it's
guys
all,
our age remember
fuck-
that.
I know it's.
Yeah, I got into the game a little late compared to some, my buddy CJ up at Wall and Pawpack's 22.
Yeah.
And he's crushing. He's already the head brewer of a 20-barrel brew house.
It's a gorgeous
Oh
brew
my
house.
God, what a facility!
Yeah.
Huh? I got to brew up. We did a saison together.
That's
It's
right. We were talking about that.
Absolutely
we were trying to get
killer.
together. Yeah.
We're gonna put it on soon. It's a Fodor conditioned saison.
'Cause they have
we'll call
Fodors
it
up
country
there.
beer. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have one here.
Okay.
And so we're big. Yeah.
Yeah, the Pocono Mountains. So we have a house about 10 miles from there, and I
Oh,
was at the
neat.
grocery store. I was working on a new book. I was up there
Right across
over
the street.
summer. Right, and I'm looking. I'm like, wow, those look like tanks through the window. I'm like, but that used to be an Arby's. Yeah, and stopped in, and what's sort of amazing is at this point, no matter where you go, there's a lot of really good beer. Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna pour a nitro porter.
Yeah, sorry, I was
No, it's
instructed.
okay.
And there is and there's a lot of that's the thing, and it depends on your approach. So our approach here, and this is by no means. I'm not speaking for everybody who works here because I don't know. Ryan over here who's pouring us our beer.
Yeah.
Happens to really enjoy hoppy American beers. So Josh does too. I do as well.
Right.
It's not necessarily all of our preference to make them, but what's really nice about the dynamic here is it is a team effort, and it is a lot of teamwork makes the dream work here. So when I say when Gina and I, it's because these guys weren't working here yet. It's not that these guys don't necessarily appreciate it, or I just can't speak for them. But when we designed the brewery, and the idea was that the beers, although in our opinion came first, the tap room had to reflect that. I burn sage in here almost weekly. We do have a spirit
To get rid of the bad juju.
Yeah, well, and they've actually proved that physically, that actually sage, burning certain herbs, put positive ions into the atmosphere, which then take negative ions
Sure.
and drop them out of suspension.
Yeah, no,
you are
the
actually
magazine's
taking
based in
negative.
Colorado. We know about burning herbs.
Yeah,
but
burning
it's,
negative
yeah.
energy. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that too. Let's face it. Not for all of us.
This is the brewing
maybe just
industry,
Kevin,
after
because he's a
all.
reefer
Yeah.
addict, and I can't wait till he listens to that.
All right, so before we start going down too many various tangents, because I do want to talk about this beer that's in front of us, but the other thing that I'm sure piqued the interest of a lot of listeners is you talked about having a direct fire system, and having that. It's not something that you see all that much in brew houses these days, and because it's just not always convenient.
Well, we sort of maybe have a hybrid. We actually have an electric-fired kettle. We have a
Okay.
direct-fire hot liquor tank.
Okay.
And the design idea behind that was getting the kettle to temperature efficiently and quickly.
Okay.
It's direct induction. It's not tremendously traditional. Somebody like, what do you call?
Why did you want it then?
I was thinking economic, and in the long run, I mean, electricity is a bit more expensive, but it's a lot easier to install and to protect. You know, with the gas, you need fireboxes, and you need a lot more sanctions and variances and things like this. Whereas with the direct fire, there's nothing but electric elements directly input into a kettle. It's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other, usually, if I may use that phrase, Paul Haleko. But it is really it was again by design with great intent. We didn't do steam because we have no room for a boiler. Every brewery I've ever worked at or interned at, I interned at Chelsea Brewing Company when it was in Manhattan for years. And I worked at Newburgh, and those were both steam-jacketed systems. That neither of them were direct fire. So for me, it was really a matter of how do I do this efficiently, quickly, get us open, and to my design specs. We find that electric works pretty well here. I can't get a crystal clear, like, our SRM is usually a little high because there is caramelization. I've never found scorched wort, except one time very early on. Something came across maybe a little bit phenolic or maybe even a little italicized from like some scorched wort. And then actually a second time, Ryan and I had a stuck mash with a wheat beer, and some of those proteins adhered to the elements and gave it a scorch. Otherwise, we've had some nice results with the electric. We clean it really well. Gas fired on the kettle, on the hot liquor tank, so, you know, God forbid the electric goes out for a day, at least we have hot water on demand to do other processes and to get water to temp. It doesn't have to be as quickly. We could do it a little bit more slowly, but efficiently and cost-wise.
Gotcha.
That was the idea behind that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we do have a double capacity hot liquor tank. We could theoretically do a double brew day. We just
Do
did
you try not to, though?
We've never done one here. We couldn't before because our heat exchanger was such a pile of shit. We just got a new one, and now we're casting out in like 25 minutes, which is rock.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thermaline is like, I'm going to give them a plug. Thermaline kills it. The one we had before was a pile of shit from China that just sucked ass.
Yeah.
Oh, it was awful. For people out there listening that don't know what a heat exchanger does, it exchanges heat. It gets wort into your fermenter. It gets
I love
wort.
that you waited to say that until I was taking a sip of a nitro porter. So thanks. Yeah, that was.
Oh, you're not allergic to cherries, are you? There are
Great. Now you tell
yeah,
me,
right. I know. I'm thinking about anaphylactics.
Giving
here.
somebody, yeah.
There are cherries
no,
in there. It says it on the board. It doesn't say it when face to face.
Great, the board that's around the corner.
Right, sure. John Holl's dead, everybody. He didn't make it 8 years. He was right.
We were drinking a beer before this nitro porter came, and you're still very connected to the homebrew community.
Yeah.
You started off as a home brewer. I'm not giving away too much because people should go and read the magazine or check out the profile of you online when it gets up online. But you were a home brewer. You have your Mr. Beer kit hanging up here. You recognize where you came from, and you're still very active in and aware of and sort of encouraging of the homebrew community.
Absolutely. They were the hardest community to win over. I couldn't give two fucks about the beer geeks because they don't typically like me anyway. If they do like me, I'm
That's
thrilled.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're not paying the rent here. They want beer in cans. They want the next thing. If they ever decide they want it, I'm more than the board even says all are welcome here. Just don't be a jerk. It's supposed to say don't be a dick, but kids come in here.
Yeah.
The homebrew community was a community
we reserve the right to refuse service.
That's right. That's actually a law that has to be hung somewhere.
Wow.
Legibly. So we did
Okay.
it. Well, the refuse service part, not the dick part.
Yeah.
Keystone Homebrew.
I don't know what happened to the Commonwealth. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, it's draconian in some ways. Other ways, it's very progressive. Two blocks away from here is Keystone Homebrew. They're awesome. Ryan
They're
actually.
great people, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Their crew is one. Like even before I opened a brewery, and the homebrewers were a hard crowd. I mean, they were like, oh, great, another. Because when we first moved here, the local newspaper said, New York actor to open brewery. What the fuck? Everybody thinks Robert De Niro's going to walk through town, and there comes me, Never says anything about Newburgh Brewing, Chelsea
No.
Brewing, Pony Bar. New York actor from Tony and Tina's wedding.
Which is, and what a show.
Oh, it was great.
What a
Yeah,
show.
well, that taught me a lot about
an
customer
immersive-
service.
What an immersive experience.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, I do it every night here.
Yeah, it's
Some people belong behind the bar, and some people belong far away from the bar, or on the other side. So Ryan actually, you met Ryan before, the Ginger Ninja for our listeners who are familiar. He works at Keystone Homebrew, and that's where I found him. You know, being a red-haired person, he was
just standing
abandoned.
among the standing among the car boys.
Soulless among the monk. No, he's he's thumbing up right now.
Yeah.
Reminder: they are working right now. Don't feed the brewers. So Ryan works there. Actually, he splits his time between us and them. We have an awesome relationship. Homebrewers will come in here and they'll ask me for recipes, or we'll talk about beer styles, and it's very encouraging for both sides. We've actually had one homebrewer who comes in here, amazing guy, Richard Kahn, Dr. Pepper we call him because he loves hot peppers, and we share hot peppers. He actually provided our wild yeast for our 100% Pennsylvania beer we did. He did a spontaneous ferment. We harvested, cropped, and propped that yeast strain and made a 100% Pennsylvania beer. It's like a super Belgian saison. It is out of control. It's so cool. But he wasn't doing stuff like that before he met us, and quite frankly, I wouldn't have had that yeast if he didn't capture it for us.
Interesting.
So yeah, we have a really great relationship with the homebrewers, and I don't forget where I came from. I mean, I did it for years. I continued to do it even while I was working at breweries. And actually, that's So Harry, the beer you were talking about, is a Scotch ale.
Okay.
It's based on our recipe for Scottish breakfast. Harry wanted to make a Scotch ale. He might be working with a brewery in New Jersey. I don't know that I'm able to say which one because I don't know that they want to release the information.
Yeah, we don't have to.
Yeah, so they approached him about smoking some malt for him.
Because Harry, because people don't necessarily know.
Right.
So
Harry, you know Harry.
Everybody knows
Harry
Harry
Sheldon,
from
of course, from Haynes Pork Shop, the oldest pork shop in America, in 1865.
Which, by the way, is if you're ever finding yourself in that part of Jersey, you have to go. And I think that's the last time I saw you in person was I was researching another cookbook, a Jersey cookbook, and then we stood around for about 2 or 3 hours. You guys had just finished butchering a hog,
right?
And we're standing around, and it's the metallic scent of blood is in the air, and we're all popping IPAs. And
we had just brewed Pigtail Pale Ale for the first time.
Right.
Harry wanted to start homebrewing.
Okay.
Harry Sheldon, owner of
Haynes Pork Shop,
oldest pork store in America, 1865, family owned. In Mickleton,
you are
New
nothing.
Jersey.
You're nothing if not on point. Yeah.
My wife is from that town, so again, when Gina and I got sidetracked by her grandmother's passing and the farm being available, we ended up in South Jersey and tried to open up down there. I ended up working at Haynes Pork Shop, met John. Actually, we'll say met John because I met you there.
Oh, sure.
I probably met you prior, either
we were hanging
Extreme
out at
Beer
Pony,
Fest,
sure.
ACBF, Pony Bar, whatever. So Harry wanted to start homebrewing, so I was like, well, what do you want? He said he wanted an IPA. So I said, well, how about this, and this? I'm really into these Pacific Jade hops, and I love Cascades. Let's make a really malt-forward English IPA hybrid. It's more American in the hopping, but English in the ESB, and it became an extra pale ale is what we called it. That was when I started. I'm not making an IPA unless it's an IPA. Damn it! So I brewed that with Harry. You came by 2 weeks later, so it was just barely ready, and we spoke about that. So Harry and I are we're thick as thieves. He's my homeboy, man. He was my saving grace down there. He was so encouraging. He's been up here to help me a couple times. And he wanted to do a Scotch ale. I said, well, Harry, why don't you do a Scotch ale? Instead of using peat smoked malt, smoke it with your smoker with your seasoning because they have that family recipe.
Oh, yeah.
So what you were tasting before is Harry's version of Scottish breakfast. He calls it Pigtail Brewing Smoked Seasonal Scotch Ale, coming in at 6.3, so it's a lower on the wee heavy side. In fact, I think this might be a 90 shilling, we'll call it.
But it really, and it's just sort of the benefit of an institution like that where you have the flavors exist. It's the same way that Cantillon is Cantillon because of where they make it and what's the ambiance, but also the terroir of what's in the rafters. And so smoking malts in a pork shop that's been around since 1865. There it is. It's an institution. You're going to get some of those flavors and some of those tastes into it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the cool thing about homebrewers, though. And is that been a tough thing for you to replicate, of finding something that is, you build your own authenticity based on where you are? and things will come over time,
Right.
Because you're also doing sours as well, and
Yeah.
you know, even though we're running out of time, I do want to mention that. But you're doing sours, so you're thinking about a lot of you know, what you're putting into your beer. You know, here, is it? Are there things that you're missing, or things that you still get jealous of homebrewers being? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's a learning curve. We're still dialing. We had a low mash temperature the last 2 weeks because we're redialing in on some components that we have added to our mash tun. What I miss about homebrewing is how little it mattered. To quote Charlie Papazian, "Relax, have a homebrew."
yeah,
This isn't relaxation. These beers, we manufacture wort here to be fermented by yeast.
Yeah.
Act of God, we'll call it, whatever it is. So many variables. There's bottom lines. I'm not a wealthy person. You know, these guys need to. If my customers, if the guests at Bonn Place Brewing, the employees at Bonn Place Brewing, and therefore our family, in the broader sense of the term, are happy, my nuclear family, my immediate family is happy, because then we can eat and we can sleep well.
sure.
If all three of those components, none are primary, secondary, tertiary, but if all three of those components are happy, we're okay. If we're making bad beer, our consumers are not going to be happy. Therefore, our bartender's not going to be happy. Therefore, my family's not going to be happy.
And I feel like every time that we've talked, you've mentioned, including earlier in this podcast, about dumping batches of beer.
We have, yeah. We've dumped 3, really. We had a bad mash one day, and then we had to dump 2 batches out of the fermenter. I tried. I mean, we put a healthy dose of Brett in there, tried to clean up the butyric, maybe turn it to ethyl butyrate and convert it, and it was straight like funky cheese.
It just wasn't.
It was off. It wasn't isovaleric. It was baby vomit initially, and then it went to like footy, gross. Yeah, we can't serve that. I'm sorry. I know some breweries are okay with that, and a lot of breweries do have bottom line to worry about. And there may be consumers out there that are like, this is great. We're hyper about that here, and I think more breweries should have that responsibility. That's not to say that we've never put out product that I don't think is incredible. That's not what I'm saying here.
Right.
We've probably put out 2 or 3 beers that I'm like, okay, it's okay, and it moved, it went, but
that's sort of the act of humility that I was talking about before. There's been brewers who I've met who swear up and down that what they've served me is, you know, the best possible pint. You know, this is the best pint of X that you're ever going to have. And it's like, first of all, that's a really bold claim.
especially going to you with that.
Well, no, but not even me. But I think it's saying that to anybody kind of thing, because you know, there's so many factors that go into tasting to tasting pints. But if you're at this point where you know that something isn't necessarily where you want it to get, but people are still going to drink it and enjoy it, but to go back to your opus, to try to make it better and to continuously try to, you know, grow. And what are we?
Guys, if you want to eat lunch, it's on the table over there. During your
lunch is on the
Whirlpool
table,
rest.
fellas.
Yeah, we're running out of time, John. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
no, that's all good. We're
I'm not running out of time. I don't want to. Okay, now
no,
I'm
but we are
blabbering.
running. But we are running out of time. But I mean, so I guess it. Is that the thing? Is the work of a brewer never finished?
Never. I'm hypercritical. When I said publicly that Nemo was the best, was the best beer, I think it's the best beer we've ever put out. And I might have said, like, you know, in my humble opinion, that it, due to the style and how I feel about beer, I typically don't answer that question. If somebody says, "What's your favorite?" I say, "Do you have any kids?" And if they say no, then it's a moot point. But if I say, "Well, who's your favorite?" You know, like.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, this could be this could, and it's constantly, what can we do to improve this? Why didn't Mooey get a gold? What can we do to improve that?
Sure.
Should we use English hops? Maybe that would have made the judges. Maybe that was a comment that was left off the page. What can make it more perfect? What can make it better? Our yeasts are very happy here. We play music for them. I burn sage. I kiss the tanks goodnight every night. I say goodnight to my cold box. We put a lot of love into this product. We actually put, not physically, but we put our hearts and souls into it. Physically, in the sense of like labor, and then emotionally in the sense that I'm down here, you know, hugging tanks and kissing tanks. I don't know that it helps, but I certainly know that it doesn't hurt. From homebrewing, I miss the fact that it didn't really matter, and you know, I could put my heart on my sleeve. I could wear my heart on my sleeve, and if we got a bad review, it was 5 gallons.
Yeah.
And by review, I don't mean Untapped. I mean like somebody, one of my friends drinking it. And in here, I mean a consumer, a guest. to answer that last question, it's more, I guess, our work can never possibly be done because you can always do better. Just keep going, fuck it. When I was very active, I run every day now. I've run every day at least 2 miles for the last 3 years. December 23rd will be 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Consecutive. Never
You
missed
started
a day.
a New Year's resolution early.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
It was a streaking group, we'll call it.
Okay.
And there's one other guy still doing it.
Oh, good.
He started January 3rd,
Uh-huh.
so I got him by like 12
Yeah.
days. Sorry, Chris. So my mantra often when I'm running, if I'm going up a hill, I'm like, just fucking keep going, dog. You got this. Like, keep going, keep going, keep going. Well, that's with brewing, too. Oh, that smells great, guys.
It is smelling like a brewery in here right now.
Yeah,
It's very,
yeah.
very nice.
So, to answer that other question you said, to tell people what I didn't expect is I feel like, that whole I'll sleep when I'm dead thing.
Yeah.
I've said it for years. I've actually said I'll walk when I'm dead. Like, I'm going to keep running. I never knew I was going to have to run so much. And I am, and it's not my baby. The 6-month-old son of mine.
That's your baby.
Yeah, he doesn't keep me awake.
No.
This place keeps me awake. Thank God, because if he was keeping me awake, I wouldn't have made it those 8 years either, John.
Sam Masotto is the owner and the brewer of Bonn Place Brewing Company here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is incredibly active on a Tuesday morning with his staff here. You can read more about Sam and his brewery in the latest issue on newsstands and in your mailbox right now of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. If you don't subscribe, please do. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, you can subscribe to this podcast and then leave comments and marks, or you can email me at John Holl, that's JOHNHO as in Oscar, LL at beerandbrewing.com, or drop me a line on Twitter, which is at John_Holl. Sam, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And for those of you who don't follow John already, it's or us, and for that matter,
It's pictures of my dog, which and beer that I'm drinking.
That's more where I was going with it. But the pictures of the dog are incredible. So if you don't know this, we love dogs.
Well, thanks so much for listening, and we will be back next week with a brand new episode. Cheers,
See you guys. Bye.
If you love brewing as much as we do and are inspired by the work of leading commercial brewers like Mitch Steele of New Realm, Tommy Arthur of Lost Abbey, Matt Brittleson of Firestone Walker, Jeff Stuffings and Avery Swanson of Jester King, Jason Perkins of Allagash, and more, then put one of our 2018 Brewers Retreat events on your calendar. These luxury brewing events at gorgeous resort locations around the country pair great brewers, great food, and intimate camaraderie for a truly unique and unforgettable experience. Learn more at brewersretreat.com. And if you're interested in reaching the thousands of listeners who tune into every episode of the Craft Beer Brewing Podcast, we'd love to welcome you as a sponsor. For more information, drop an email to info@beerandbrewing.com, and our media sales team will craft a plan that works for you. This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.